What do we do now? We should forgive our enemies' trespasses, and we should prevent our enemies from trespassing again in the future. Some people seem to misunderstand Christian forgiveness. They think that it's somehow contrary to criminal justice, that it means being a wimp, that it means letting criminals off the hook, that it means anarchy. On the contrary, Christian forgiveness is about recognizing that vengeance belongs to the Lord who will repay. That's the first part. While criminal justice belongs to the civil authority which does not bear the sword in vain. Erika Kirk forgave her husband's killer. The state of Utah will inject poison into that killer's veins until he's dead. There is no contradiction between those two things. Christian forgiveness does not demand that we allow the cruel to ravage the whole earth. It demands that we love our enemies, and sometimes love is tough. In our personal lives, love means praying for those who persecute us. In politics, love usually means punishing the guilty, both for the protection of the innocent as well as for the good of the criminals. No one benefits from crime, decay, and disorder. Not the rest of us, and not the criminals themselves.
I'm just going to start this out by saying that I wrote this in the end of August, obviously before Charlie's passing. So this was a question for him. But I do think it's important to read, and I did make an edit to it on 9/11, so I will read that as well. But my name's Maria, and I'm going to skip over some things that just for the sake of time. I do believe labels are too emphasized, but in this scenario, I do believe it's important for the context. First and most importantly, I'm a child of God, and I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. I hope that for every person here as well. I was born in a very poor country. I was adopted when I was young, and I'm a poster child for anybody who says that they should have been aborted for the left. I'm very pro-life. I was previously, and shockingly, very pro-choice. And I was almost forced into abortion later in life, and I've also had really horrible experiences with Planned Parenthood. To go off of that, my question that, and you kind of touched on it today, was about the death penalty and being pro-life. Ironically enough, the edit I made to this note on 9/11 was, and I'm going to read this very candidly, but I will censor it. It says, F this, the death penalty is great, and I hope we use it on that guy. F everything.
I think many people agree.
I will say that I do see the difference between an innocent baby in the womb and a murderer or an assassin, but I do still feel like we are playing, as humans, we're playing judge, jury, and executioner instead of God. I do believe that God has a plan for all of us, when we die, we either go to heaven or hell, and he will have the ultimate justice and make everyone, especially murderers, answer for their sins. What would you say to that?
Well, we do play judge, jury, and executioner. We're the only people who can play that because we live in a society, and so we need judges. We need judges to decide lawsuits. We need judges to decide criminal cases and to protect the innocent. We have juries. We're lucky that we have jury trials in our system. And we have executioners because there's nothing intrinsically evil about the death penalty. Some people make arguments from prudence that it might no longer be necessary in our advanced society, though I'm skeptical since we frequently let criminals off the hook and there are calls from mainstream politicians to abolish prisons. So I actually think that prudential argument is a bit weaker today than it was even decades ago. But St. Paul tells us that the civil authority does not bear the sword in vain. We know that throughout history, at least for the mackerel-snapping papists out here, there have been popes not only who there's some out here in Minnesota. We know for the Catholics in the crowd we know that there are popes who not only defended the death penalty, but actually carried them out, including Blessed Pius IX, who carried out some 500 executions in the Papal States. So I don't think one could say it's intrinsically evil. I don't think we would call St. Paul a murderer. And it gets to the question of what punishment is for. Punishment has three purposes. The first one is retribution. It's because you do something wrong. We don't put people in prison or on death row simply because they have some bad habits. We could all use a little rehabilitation, I'm sure. That's not the reason you go to jail. It's because you did something. So there's retribution for what you did. The second purpose is deterrence and obviously protecting the public. Maybe we loop that in. But then another purpose is rehabilitation. We want to correct these errors in people because it's actually cruel to the criminals to let them persist in their degradation. It's very harmful to their lives and ultimately to their souls. So we want to correct them. This is an argument that goes back to Plato, if not further back. There's a line from Dr. Johnson who says, "Depend upon it, sir, when a man knows he's to be hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully." That actually, when a man is facing death, it can focus him. It can cause him to think more deeply on spiritual matters. It can actually help to rehabilitate his soul. For this and all of the other reasons, the death penalty has never been thought of as an intrinsic evil, and it can be called for. If you say, then we're playing God, well, are we not playing at God when we sentence someone to 30 years in prison? Are we not playing God when we enact any other kind of justice? And when we pass any other kind of laws? No, what we're doing is recognizing that God gives certain authority to the civil government for our good, because we live in society. We're a political creature, and we are going to live that way somehow, and so we might as well do it for the common good. That's a responsibility that falls on human beings. We do it to the best of our ability. We ask for God's grace in that, but we can't shirk the responsibility, because the alternative is chaos and disorder. And there's nothing Christian about that.
I think my mind has been changed a lot on the death penalty even this last week. But I just have a hard time, because I think that if we're putting someone to death, I think we might not have known what the plan that God had for them was, because whoever it was
But maybe the plan was that we kill him through the civil authority.
What? Sorry, say that again?
Maybe the plan was that we, through our civil authority, bring him to trial and convict him of a capital offense and execute capital punishment. Why is that precluded from God's plan? Why is that the one thing that we're not allowed to do? I understand the fear and the awe in the face of God of interfering with God's plans. It's very difficult to interfere with God's plans. The only thing you can do is to oppose God, and God is still going to win in the end. You can oppose God when you sin, when you commit an act of evil. There is nothing that I see about the death penalty that is intrinsically evil. And so I think your conscience is clear on that matter. And on anything else, you might say, well, I had a burrito for lunch. What if God wanted me to have a hamburger? He might have. I don't know. We have to ask for God's grace. We have to use our reason to discern his will as best we can. And we have to use our abilities to cooperate with God's will. And we do that prayerfully, and we hope for the best. I don't think there's something magical about capital punishment that excludes that from all the rest of human action.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is, I think, again, this is a controversial topic, but I do believe that abortion isn't correct in any case. And a lot of times that includes rape, incest, all of those things. But I will say that a lot of times, even I have used this before, we say that we don't justify evil with evil. And I'm feeling so difficult about this, but I feel like we're choosing evil, So if you think the death penalty is evil, then I could see how you would arrive at that conclusion. But I wonder, you're a Christian, I take it. I am.
So then how could you conclude that the death penalty is evil when St. Paul writes in the letter to the Romans that the civil authority is given to us for our own good and does not bear the sword in vain? How could you conclude from that the death penalty is evil when he says that it's appointed by God?
I hadn't thought about it like that.
There you go. All right. I helped in one way. Charlie would have taken care of that 5 minutes ago. It takes me a little longer.
My thoughts on the death penalty, capital punishment, coming from a country standpoint, if you look at countries outside of U.S., you'll know that they got the firing squad where if somebody just has drugs in that country, you'll get the death penalty, no questions asked. And you might be like, man, that's tough right there. Matter of fact, there's a movie that came out not too long ago. I think it's called The Firing Squad. And anyways, this man, he had drugs in another country and they found him in another country. He got executed by the firing squad. And it wasn't, I felt like, the thing is, he gave his life to God while he was in that country. And it was sad. I feel like he should be redeemed, get a second chance. But in a sense, he still did because he got saved. If he gave his life fully to God, then he's good. Because he knew that this is the consequences when you do something like this. I'm sure he knew. Every action has a consequence, and this was his consequences. So I think about that when I'm thinking about our country. From a Christian and personal point of view, I can't see somebody getting killed over something they did, even if it is pure murder. But, because I believe in the redemptive business where somebody can be saved and be forgiven. Think about this. If you're in the place of being a governor, you have to put in these guidelines of how this country is going to run. And if you don't have the death penalty put in place, so many people will take advantage. However, when you do have it in place, it's going to make people think twice and not do it. So I would dare to say that there'd be even more people killing people if the death penalty wasn't an option. So that's the flip side of it. Now, if we go to the Bible on some of this stuff, the Bible does support the death penalty, specifically in the Old Testament. Like you got things like Genesis 9:6, where whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. In Romans chapter 13, this is the New Testament, where Paul, he speaks of rulers bearing the sword to punish wrongdoers, which some interpret this as affirmation of the state's God-given authority to use capital punishment. So there is different things in the Bible that support this, but at the same time, there's things that's in the Bible that seem to maybe go against support of this. When you talk about mercy and forgiveness, and how Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek," and how we must focus on grace. And so there's a sharp contrast right here. So when somebody does support the death penalty, I'll respect their wishes on it, and I understand where they're coming from. But me particularly, I don't feel like I could support it, because I believe, as a Christian, we're in the redemptive business. I would hope that they'd at least have some space before they got the death penalty, that a minister could go and tell them about Jesus and give them a chance to give their life to God and be saved. And then I feel like that they don't have nothing to worry about when they do face the death penalty. I would hope there'd be some type of opportunity like that. I do realize at the same time that whatever plan that man has for people that commit murders, that God can intervene on their behalf and make it where they won't get killed if it's God's will. So that's where I'm at on it. I'm leaning more on not supporting it, but at the same time, I respect people that do. And I would say that maybe there is times when it should happen. But like I said, I couldn't be the one to do it, because I'm a Christian, and I just couldn't see that happen. And I want to see them having that opportunity to make it to heaven. And I believe we read in the Bible that anyone can make it to heaven. Anyone can be forgiven of anything they did wrong and make it to heaven. if they want to. And so because I'm on that side of the support, I couldn't be a part of it, the execution. I can respect people that feel that way and understand, but this is where my stance is on it. God bless.